Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel and another video. Today's video topic, as you can see, is the question of whether or not veganism is a first world privilege or a privilege in general. Is it a first world luxury? I have a lot of things to say about this topic, so I really hope you guys stick around to the end. Maybe grab a cup of coffee, a cup of tea, a glass of wine. I'm not judging, okay? Let's have a discussion. So before I get started with this video, I just want to give a big shout out to a YouTuber that I've recently discovered, and she goes by the name of Privileged Vegan, although I think she recently said that she might change her name, so I don't know, her name might be different next time, but her username on YouTube at this time is called A Privileged Vegan. I have been binge watching her videos because I feel like she talks about a lot of things that other YouTubers in the vegan community don't necessarily address, and I'm also part of that. And she talks about things outside of veganism that are linked to veganism, and I think it's really important, some of the things that she has to say. She made me think about a lot of things that I never really thought about before. She gets some criticisms from other vegans for, criticizing the vegan movement, and I think that's a little bit unfair. I think it's very important to continue to criticize whatever you're trying to do. Continue to reflect on yourself and see what things we could improve on, and that's how you grow a community and make it even better. I really hope you guys check out her YouTube channel. I'll leave all the links to her channel and a few of her videos down below in the description box. I definitely got some inspiration from her videos to do this video. I was thinking about doing this video for a long time, but she definitely kind of, made me think about a few other things that I'm including in this video as well. So definitely check out her channel. Anyways, let's just get started with the question of whether or not veganism is a privilege. First and foremost, I just want to come out and say right away that I agree that certain privileges in my life have definitely led me toward veganism and toward the journey of veganism. For instance, I never really had to fight for my own survival. I never had to worry about where my next meal was coming from. I never had to really worry about money, to be honest. Yes, I worked and did all of this stuff, but I never really struggled. This is definitely a privilege, the fact that I never really had to struggle, because most people in the world have to struggle to put even food on the table, if they even have a table, to be honest. Thanks to these definite privileges, I had the energy and the time to even think about other issues outside of myself. If I was starving, if I was the single mother of 3 children and I was working 14-hour days and making below the poverty line, and I was always worrying about putting food on the table and buying clothes for my children, then I wouldn't really have the energy to think about social justice issues like veganism or anything else for that matter. I would just be concerned with making sure I get enough money to feed my children. So the fact that I didn't have to have those struggles have definitely influenced me going vegan. So it's no coincidence that veganism is much more prevalent in countries that are generally more affluent, and even in communities that are more affluent as well. Having said all of those things, I don't actually believe that veganism as a movement itself is a privilege or a luxury, because I feel that it's more of a responsibility on our part as people that are privileged, as people that are able to worry about issues like this. It's kind of a responsibility for us to step up and actually say, hey, maybe we shouldn't be doing all of this stuff, especially considering that the people contributing the most to animal suffering and animal cruelty and consuming animal products are people of privilege. So since we are of privilege and are able to make a choice whether or not to contribute to the suffering of animals, then why shouldn't we take the responsibility and make the right choice when we have the choice? I guess I find it very ironic and slightly strange that people would be using this whole privilege thing as some sort of an excuse or a reason not to go vegan, when most people that are making these claims, that are complaining that veganism is a privilege or a luxury, are also those of privilege themselves. Pretty much every single person I've heard this argument coming from are people of privilege themselves, and pretty much in a similar position, as far as I can see, as me and other vegans. So I guess I just don't really understand what exactly they're trying to argue by saying that veganism is a privilege. Pretty much everything we do beyond our basic necessities is a privilege. For example, driving a car, owning a computer, having access to internet, eating dessert, going out to eat at a restaurant, going traveling. All of these are privileges, but no one really seems to have a problem with those things. But when it comes to veganism, apparently there's an issue with veganism being a privilege. I recently read an article or a blog post by a girl that was arguing that veganism is a first world luxury or veganism is a first world privilege, and she talks about her experience eating at a restaurant with her vegan friend. Apparently her vegan friend was making a fuss or being very picky about her dessert not being vegan, and how, you know, other people in the world don't really have that privilege to choose whether or not their dessert is vegan. First of all, I feel like the author of this blog post or article has completely misunderstood the entire point of veganism. If you actually understood what veganism is about, it's not about being picky or choosy or not liking dairy products or whatever. It's not about that. It's an actual stance against certain industries and certain practices that go against our own core values. She clearly just doesn't understand why people are vegan. She just thinks her friend is just making a fuss or just being a little bit difficult, when that's really not the case at all. Secondly, I just find it very comedic that she is complaining about how veganism is a luxury while she's eating dessert at a restaurant. Since when was eating dessert at a restaurant not a luxury enjoyed by only a few people? I'm sure you chose that dessert on the menu. I'm sure you chose whatever the hell you got for dinner. I'm sure that was a choice that you took yourself. So what is the difference between your friend asking for a vegan dessert and you asking for whatever dessert that you wanted? What the hell is the difference? I'll tell you what the difference is. The difference is that while you choose something on the menu that you want, you're only choosing it for your taste buds and for your enjoyment, while your friend is actually choosing something based on her values and based on factors greater than just her own taste buds. So I'm sorry, but your argument that veganism is a luxury is irrelevant and invalid when you're eating at a restaurant yourself and ordering dessert. Whew. Okay, my next point. Just because something is a privilege does not necessarily mean that it's bad or that we shouldn't do it, especially when it's for the greater good or to create a better world and a better society. For instance, education is a privilege that a lot of people enjoy. I would see education as a right, to be honest, but I think secondary education, further education, is definitely a privilege enjoyed by very few people in the world. But no one would say that education or having access to good education or taking the opportunity to get good education is a bad thing or that's something that people shouldn't do. Because guess what? Having a much more educated population creates a better society as a whole. So this is for the greater good, and that's how I see veganism as well. Sure, maybe only a few people have the privilege of, you know, choosing to go vegan or not. I know that there are circumstances in which it is difficult for people to go vegan. I understand that, and I think these are issues that are relevant. However, it's just not really an argument to be made against veganism. I think what we need to do is to try to see what we can do to make veganism accessible to everyone. So this kind of leads me to my next point that I think needs to be addressed. Another reason why a lot of people say veganism is a privilege is because a lot of people think that veganism is expensive and that not everyone can afford to be vegan. Again, I would like to point out that a lot of people that make this veganism is too expensive argument are not necessarily those people that are in the position of not being able to afford veganism, if that makes sense. I understand that there are actually people out there that can't afford veganism or they don't have access to vegan food or whatever it may be. However, I don't necessarily take sympathy in somebody that lives in a very affluent way and says that veganism is too expensive for themselves. I guess that's where I see the issue. So I do want to touch on some issues that the YouTuber I mentioned in the beginning of the video, A Privileged Vegan, talked about that I didn't actually even know about. One of the things that she discusses is the existence of what are called food deserts. So food deserts apparently are, I think in America mainly, I'm not sure, I'm probably wrong. This was a bit of a shock to me that in a developed country such as America, there would be so many people living in food deserts, but I think she mentioned something like 23 million Americans, something along those lines, are living in food deserts, which means that they don't have adequate access to grocery stores or just good food in general, like healthy, good food. And instead, they have access to fast food restaurants and just things that aren't really of high quality. This is a big issue because a lot of people living in those areas are stricken with poverty, obviously, and that's why those food deserts actually exist, because corporations are taking their money elsewhere where they can make more money. So instead, these people are left with fast food restaurants, which is why there are so many people living under the poverty line that are obese. And this is a real issue. There needs to be something done about it. Like, I'm not sure what me and you and other people can do about it, except for at the moment raise awareness for these types of issues, because these are the real people that can't really go vegan or won't even think about going vegan because they obviously have other things to worry about, like putting food on the table, for example. But when we address these issues that these people are facing, when we start to, you know, make sure that these people are getting the adequate food and whatever necessary, then this is better for veganism as well, because more of these people, once they have access to these foods, can make the right choices for those foods. So yeah, I don't really know where I'm getting at with this, but I really wanted to mention the food desert thing because I think a lot of us vegans, we are a little bit ignorant in the fact that there are lots of people out there, even in developed countries, that are living under the poverty line. And now I kind of get more so that there are circumstances in which people can't just go out and buy like a bunch of produce or beans and rice and lentils and worry about healthy eating, especially when most of what they have access to is a fast food restaurant. Anyways, I'll leave a link to a Privileged Vegan's video on the topic of food deserts. I'm sure she can explain it much better than I can, so definitely check that out. Now, for those of you that do not live in a food desert, for those of you that have adequate money, that do not live in poverty, that have the opportunity of going on the internet, watching documentaries, educating yourself, reading books, then in this case, vegan diet is cheaper. It really is. If you have access to, you know, grocery stores and things like that, for the most part, I would say that veganism is not more expensive. It really depends on how you eat. Yes, you can make it more expensive. Let's be honest with ourselves too, right? Like, I see people all the time buying a bunch of fancy stuff, you know, like they have a MacBook, they've got a nice camera, they've got a nice phone, they've got like brand named clothes and brand name bags, and then they're complaining about how vegan diet is too expensive. Vegan diet is not more expensive. For the most part, I would say it is not more expensive. Also, I really want us to remember why animal products are so affordable now. Animal products weren't always so affordable for regular people like you and I, especially in developing countries. And even now in developing countries, lots of times they can't afford to eat animal products. I was born in South Korea. I don't know if you know. My parents are Korean as well, obviously. If you don't know anything about South Korea is a country that developed very, very quickly in the last like 50 years or so. So within like 50 years, maybe even less, it has gone from a very, very poverty-stricken third world country or developing country to what it is now, which is one of the top economies in the world. So my parents grew up in a very different Korea than I ever saw and what it is today. My parents always used to tell me stories about how when they were growing up, they didn't have enough to eat and they barely ate meat because meat was very expensive. It was just not affordable for the majority of the population, and it was a luxury enjoyed by, you know, the rich, or a luxury that you would have once in a while. So even if they have meat, it would be a very small amount and it would only be once in a while. But now that Korea is a much more developed country and now it's one of the top economies in the world, meat and animal products are everywhere and a lot of people are eating more and more meat. So I ask you, why then do you think veganism is the luxury or plant foods are the luxury when it's clearly the opposite? And it's the same thing with China. What's happening with China is that more and more people are consuming more and more animal products. And as a result of this, they're getting a lot more health problems, but that's a whole other video. They're consuming so many more animal products now that China is becoming much more affluent. So your argument actually makes no sense. We should all know by now that animal products are very high in resources. They consume so many resources. They're so resource heavy. We need so much more land, so much more water, and so much more food in order to feed this meat-hungry population of ours than we would need if we were just eating plants. Logistically speaking, it just doesn't make sense for us to believe that vegan diet just as a whole is more expensive than a meat-eating diet. Yes, right now there are some issues with the infrastructure, there are some issues with our economy and how, you know, meat industries are funded heavily by the government and how they're subsidized by the government. Like, all of these issues, they exist. However, overall, like, plant foods are definitely cheaper to produce, and as more and more people eat plant foods, I feel that things are going to change. I also want to remind you exactly why meat is actually more affordable right now. It's because of a beautiful practice called factory farming. Factory farming is why we have so much access to animal products and why it's so cheap. Because we put animals in these tiny little cages where they can barely move in order to cut costs. That is how these companies are able to make meat and other animal products affordable for everybody, because they treat them like complete garbage. Like, they don't treat them like individual sentient beings. They treat them like just a part of the supply chain. They are just literally products. They're just raw materials for the supply chain, when actually they are sentient beings. These are not t-shirts that are being passed down the freaking conveyor belt. These are living sentient beings, and we are treating them as if they are just raw materials, which is why meat and other animal products are so expensive at the expense of these animals. Please remind yourself that that is the reason, and the only reason why these food products are so cheap. And most people would agree when they see factory farmed animals, when they see that kind of footage, they would agree that that is not okay. Most people would turn away, they're not able to watch, and most people make the argument that we should treat the animals humanely and that we should make sure to have grass-fed, organic, enter buzzword here, meat, without realizing that the majority of the population cannot actually afford to eat that kind of meat. They can't actually afford to create enough meat if we were to have only grass-fed, only non-factory farmed animals. So that is the freaking privilege. So yeah, that's the only reason why we're able to make animal products so affordable, because we are doing such horrendous things. We don't do these horrendous things to animals just for the fun of it. We do it to cut costs. And that is why humane meat is much more expensive. So if we only created humane meat or grass-fed meat or organic meat or whatever, then the majority of the world would not be able to afford to eat meat. Maybe you and I couldn't afford to eat meat. And the only way to make it sustainable is to provide the worst and the cruelest form of farming available, which is factory farming. There are certain vegan luxuries, of course, like vegan ice cream, vegan dessert, vegan meats, and vegan cheeses, and vegan gourmet products, and all of this stuff, and I sometimes indulge in those as well. However, there is literally no difference between indulging in vegan ice cream and vegan cheese and vegan meat and eating regular ice cream and real cheese and real meat. There is no difference. The only difference is that the vegan thing is actually trying to make the world a better place, whereas this other thing is just an indulgence. Of course, vegan snacks and vegan meat products and stuff like that can be more expensive than the non-vegan counterpart, because veganism is still a small niche market and these products are not mass produced. However, it's not something that people do just for the fun of it, or just to spend a little extra money to buy these weird vegan gourmet stuff. You know, it's not something we do for fun. It's not something we do because we think it's like interesting or whatever. Well, maybe some people do it like that, but the real vegans don't do it because, oh, this is so much fun to like eat all of this, you know, random vegan stuff and pay extra money for it. We do it because it's the right thing to do, because we are standing up for a cause that we care about, such as animal rights and anti-animal cruelty. That is why we're eating this stuff. It's not to like flaunt our luxurious lifestyle. It's because we're trying to make this world a better place. And instead of indulging in cruelty-filled dairy products, for example, we can have the non-dairy counterpart and also still enjoy those luxuries, but at the same time try to do our best to minimize animal suffering. So yeah, having ice cream, eating meat, eating animal products, all of these things are luxuries as well. So I don't really see the point of arguing that veganism is a luxury when you are also enjoying all of these luxuries without thinking about other beings. Whew. So my final point, do I even need to mention non-vegan luxuries such as going to the zoo or an aquarium, expensive handbags that cost thousands and thousands of dollars and are made of leather, eating steak or lobster at a fancy restaurant? Are these not first world luxuries? What are you trying to argue? I think that is all, and I think my camera is dying, but I think I got all my points across. I really hope so. Let me know what you guys think down below. Do you think veganism itself is a luxury, or do you think, I don't know, what do you think? Do you agree with any of my points? Do you disagree? What do you think? Let me know down below. Make sure you like this video if you did like it. Make sure you share it around to anybody that likes to make this argument, and of course, make sure you subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you guys. If you made it this far, oh, I should do another one of these. If you made it this far, write down, oh God, If you made it this far on this video, if you made it to the very end, write in the comment section the word tofu along with whatever else you want to write. But yeah, write down tofu and it should be interesting. I will see you guys in my next video. Thank you guys for watching. Bye!